The film begins with a poem about how, in the beginning, there was only the moon, but she was alone. She yearned for company. That yearning brought the morning sun, and light spread everywhere. But behind the light, there was something else in the darkness, something wandering far from the light. Their child, who had been asleep for a long time, had now awakened. This poem now holds a deeper meaning, which we will learn about in the film. The scene shifts to a village where, inside a house, a woman, Magpie, is sitting at the dinner table with her two sons. We learn that David is her adopted son, and the younger one is her own child. We learn that Magpie has a plan for her husband, and this plan isn't a surprise or a joy, but rather a plan to kill him. Her husband then arrives. Magpie has spiked her tea, and he drinks it all, after which they both went to the forest to cut wood, but her husband felt very weak. Magpie had poisoned his tea. Then, on the other side, we see Magpie's father, the village pastor, lecturing the villagers on religion. It turns out that all the villagers are part of a religious community. The pastor tells everyone that they have been chosen by God to serve their religion. Meanwhile, Magpie places her husband's hand on a round, thick piece of wood so that she can cut it and kill him, but she lacks the courage. Then she drinks alcohol and musters the courage to cut off his hand. As soon as her husband dies, she begins to see a creature with white eyes and two large horns. Immediately after this, we see the pastor continuing his speech. Just then, a magpie appears among them, covered in blood. The entire community is shocked and frightened by the sight. Her deceased pastor is also completely stunned. A short while later, we see a man who is the pastor's assistant. The two were very close, and the pastor had called him here for some reason. The assistant tells the pastor that the magpie had told him that what happened to her husband was an accident. The pastor then tells him, "I called you to keep an eye on my daughter, the magpie." Then we see Magpie and her two children, all three of them on their way to the pastor's house. But on the way, the pastor and his assistant meet them. As I told you, the pastor is very religious. That's why ever since the accident, he hasn't shown any mercy to his daughter. He's making her do all the work. Even today, he was scolding them because they were supposed to be working in the fields, but they were late. And the worst part was that the pastor and the rest of the community in this village had a very old-fashioned mindset. They considered women to be mere slaves to men, but all this had upset Magpie. Furthermore, the pastor had forced Magpie to marry her husband, something Magpie didn't want at all. Magpie's younger son also had a class, and he was late. Therefore, he explained that they were actually talking about birds, which is why they were late. David interrupted, continuing his conversation. The pastor yelled at him, "I'm talking to my son's own child, not yours." This suggests that pastor didn't particularly like David. He was the one who arranged Magpie's marriage to her husband, even though he already knew she had a son, David. Afterward, the others left for work, and the pastor instructed his assistant to keep an eye on everyone. A little while later, we see Magpie and David working. A woman named Andrea, seeing David working, started taunting David. David was working among the women because he was late, she said. Hearing this, Magpie interrupted Andrea. She then began to say, "Your husband doesn't tolerate this at all." Then she started talking about her husband even more, saying he was a good man.
Your family was good because of him. Otherwise, you guys are nothing. Hearing this, Magpie became very angry. She told Andrea, "If you care so much about our family, where were you when my husband was beating his own son, David, even though he was barely alive?" From this, we understood that her husband was quite cruel. He wasn't good at all, and that's why she was fed up with her husband and wanted to kill him. One of the main reasons was that her marriage was forced, and the two ended up arguing over this. But then, something started happening to Andrea's daughter. She was having seizures, shaking strangely, and almost fainting. But Andrea blamed Magpie for all this, saying she's the one who did something to my daughter. Magpie didn't want to be put in any trouble, so she left with her son. But then Andrea and her husband appeared before her. Andrea's husband started threatening Magpie, telling her to stay away from his family. Understand? Because they thought Magpie was a witch. They thought she had cast some witchcraft spell on their daughter, but that wasn't the case at all. That's why Andrea's husband told her, "You can drive everyone crazy, but not me. And I also know that your husband's death wasn't an accident. You killed him yourself." yourself. And I don't care if you're the pastor's daughter. This is a warning for you." He spits in Magpie's face, causing her to see the creature again. She then tells Andrea's husband, "I've seen something your daughter has felt, and that's pain, and you're responsible for it because she's suffering it." With that, she leaves. We now learn that Magpie was having an affair with her own stepson, David. Meanwhile, the pastor is with the assistant talking about Magpie. He says, "The villagers are associating my daughter with witchcraft, and now Andrea has even refused to come to work because of this." The pastor feels that his daughter, Magpie, needs a new husband and tells the assistant to marry him because it would be the best for her. The pastor asks the assistant to talk to David about this, as he was the eldest son. As for the pastor, he was going to talk to his daughter himself. That night, Andrea's husband gets drunk and goes into his daughter's room, but his intentions are not right. He was about to do something wrong to her, and this was the pain Magpie had already predicted. Before he could do anything, the same white-eyed creature arrives and savagely tears him apart, killing him. The next day, Andrea is furious, believing Magpie was the reason for her husband's death. Therefore, she starts keeping an eye on him. Magpie is carrying wood from the forest when the pastor comes in, and Magpie starts reprimanding her for arguing with Andrea, who then says what she did to her deserved it. Hearing this, the pastor becomes enraged and captures Magpie. He even starts choking her and says, "You need to learn to stay calm." With this warning, he leaves. Then Magpie says, "You got me married to a monster. You ruined your own daughter's life without a second thought. And yes, your days of being a god are about to end." This means that the pastor, who considers himself the god of the community, will be finished. With that, she leaves. Despite all this, Andrea continues to follow him. She is shocked by what she sees next. What that was, we are not shown this moment, and the scene cuts to the assistant, who has come to David. It turns out they used to be very good friends, but their friendship broke due to family issues, and they haven't spoken in a while. Now the assistant has come to tell her that the pastor has asked her to marry Magpie. Then the assistant asks David, "Will you come to work or not?" David asks, "Won't you stop being the pastor's sycophant?" Hearing this, the assistant replies, "I'm not saying this at the pastor's behest, but I truly care about you all because you have to work to survive." Then they embrace.
The assistant tells him, "Even though the pastor asked me to marry Magpie, I don't want to because I like someone else, and she likes someone else." Hearing this, David says, "Yes, I know about that." Then he begins applying black paint liquid to her neck. We then see the assistant at night. Yes, he was still with David, and again, his body is visible. He was applying paint. Magpie was also there, who was also making all this happen to him. Now in front of the assistant was the same creature, and here we see that David and Magpie already knew about this creature. Magpie asks the assistant, "Do you want to live your whole life in lies?" This line implies that she is inciting the assistant against the pastor, who believed everything the pastor said, whether it was for him or against him. Immediately, the assistant's eyes open. He couldn't understand whether what he saw was a dream or something that had happened in reality. But he first sketches the creature. Magpie is working when some members of the tribe arrive. Seeing them, she calls for David, but David has already been captured by Andrea. Andrea asks Magpie to come with them, after which they bring him to a secluded place. They were about to hang her when Magpie's young son brought the pastor there, saving her. Pastor slapped Andrea hard and asked, "What were you doing?" She replied, "I'm just doing what should have been done long ago." She then accused Magpie of killing her husband, saying, "I saw Magpie yesterday while I was chasing her." This is a conversation we didn't see. She explained that while she was chasing Magpie, she saw Magpie with the creature. She was completely under the creature's control, and she was applying black paint to herself, which oozes from her body. This led us to believe the black paint was the creature's. She then revealed a shocking revelation. Magpie and the creature had been very close. Pastor Andrea then asked, "What happened to your husband?" She explains, "When I went to my daughter's room, I saw my husband's body cut into 2 pieces. This was either done by Magpie herself or by the creature she was close to." Hearing this, Magpie claims Andrea is lying. Andrea and says, "I won't work with this Magpie anymore." But the pastor insists everyone remains silent until they find the root of the matter, and he sends everyone back to work. It turns out the creature was still in the forest. Sometime later, we see the pastor who has come to his daughter. Magpie, who had a high fever, asks her what she did to Andrea's husband. She replies, "I did what he deserved." She laughs hysterically. Then her father, pastor, shows her a sketch of the creature that the assistant had made. Seeing this, she says, "I have to go to her," and then bursts into laughter. After all this, the pastor comes out and closes the door, having imprisoned Magpie alone inside. Just then, the assistant arrives, having learned that everything she saw was true. The pastor says, "I don't know anything about this," but now the villagers have turned against the pastor, so he resolves to punish his daughter. He then, along with the villagers, ties Magpie up and brings her to a secluded place. They tie her up, hurling tomatoes at her, calling her a witch, but Andrea's daughter refused to do so, knowing that Magpie was right. Just then, the pastor arrives, and everyone calms down. The pastor prays to God and promises that he
will punish Magpie. My own daughter has fallen for Satan's tricks and is becoming evil. Furthermore, she and her stepson, David, are agents of Satan's darkness, and because Magpie killed Andrea's husband, she will be punished. After saying this, he tells all the villagers to let her remain here, and God himself will punish her in the future. Then on the other side, we see the creature, from which the black paint liquid is rapidly oozing, slowly covering the entire village. This means that darkness is spreading throughout the village, and it becomes clear that what these people were doing was nothing less than darkness. Then Andrea comes to her daughter and says, "It's a good thing that you did it. What happened to the father was deserved." This means she knew her husband had evil intentions for their daughter. The assistant went to David, where David was imprisoned, and told him that the Magpie was waiting for him in the forest and had sent him to fetch him. Upon hearing this, David went with him. But upon reaching the forest, he realized that the assistant had been lying to David, and that this was all part of the pastor's plan. The pastor had called David to learn about the creature, but David laughed hysterically, having fallen under its control. Andrea was also present, and the pastor asked her where she had seen the creature. She replied that she had seen it right here. David replied they could never kill her.
The pastor replied that they could, and after saying this, he killed Andrea, after which he also killed David, who had learned about the affair between his daughter and David. He intended to kill Andrea because she was inciting the villagers against the pastor. This was also a reason for killing David, because David had also fallen under the creature's control. The pastor tells the assistant that they must tell the villagers that Andrea was killed by the creature and that David had tried to attack them. So the assistant kills him in self-defense. Then the pastor and assistant begin to leave. But before leaving, the assistant catches a glimpse of the creature. The pastor was with his daughter Magpie and was taking care of her because he truly cared for her. He killed Andrea for Magpie's sake, and he also kept Magpie imprisoned inside the room to keep her safe. When Magpie wakes up, she finds herself in the same room. Then she sees David wounded and begging for help, but we know he's dead. This means he wanted to show Magpie something. Now she asks the assistant, "Where is David?" But the assistant doesn't answer, instead asking, "What have you done to me? Ever since you guys applied that black liquid on me, I haven't felt well at all, and I keep seeing that monster. Not only that, but even the soil on this land doesn't taste right." This means that in the scene we saw where the creature oozes black liquid and spreads throughout the village, the creature was actually corrupting the land because it wanted to destroy everything. Because as we know, the villagers had become so blinded by religion that they had erased their humanity and become utterly evil. The darkness had completely engulfed them. Their minds had become completely corrupted. Therefore, everyone, including Magpie, was under the influence of that evil. She couldn't distinguish between right and wrong. She was killing people without any proof. The assistant then tells her, "I had no choice. That's why I killed David." Hearing this, Magpie can't believe it, but the assistant tells Magpie, "I feel like I'm not going to survive. And tell me, how am I still alive? After all, I've been caught in the creature's clutches." But Magpie pushes him away and leaves, only to see David again walking away. Further down the path, she sees David's corpse with a sign on it. Seeing this, Magpie becomes saddened by her inability to do anything to save him and apologizes. This was David's intention all along, as he wanted to bring her back to his corpse. The creature's power also helped him in this. The assistant starts searching for Magpie, but she is with the creature. Just then, the creature comes to the assistant, completely filled with liquid, and she slits the assistant's throat, killing him. Her father, the pastor, witnesses this. Now the pastor has no choice, as he himself witnessed his daughter doing all this. So he tries to pin him down and beat him. But then the creature kills the pastor himself, causing Magpie to laugh. This shows us that the pastor wasn't a good person either, as he too was abusive and oppressive. These same things were going on throughout the village, and because of all this evil and darkness, the creature was born. And because he was born from darkness, he kills all who do evil, including those whom Magpie and David had joined. We then hear the opening lines of the poem. "In the beginning there was only the moon, but she was alone. She longed for company, and that longing brought morning. The sun rose, spreading light everywhere, but behind the light there was someone else in the darkness, something lost, far from the light, a child of hers, shrouded in darkness, who had been sleeping for a long time, but had now awakened." This line refers to Magpie. Magpie was alone in the beginning. She had a father, but he wasn't a good father. His thinking was outdated, oppressing daughters, wives, and sisters. This evil also ran rampant within the entire community, evidenced by that darkness. After that, a son came into Magpie's life. Her father married her to an older man, but he wasn't a good man either. He wasn't her son anymore. So the son here meant
meant David, with whom Magpie fell in love. But because of her husband, she accepted the darkness and saw the creature. That's why she and David joined forces with the creature, dedicating their entire lives to the darkness. They knew it was the only way out of all this, to alleviate their suffering, whether it was right or wrong. And the awakening they were talking about was all about the creature, meaning he had awakened, and now all those who were doing wrong would be destroyed, because the creature, his darkness, and his companion Magpie had taken control of the entire village. And with this, the story of the film ends.